So I am working on this piece that I am going to put on the back of my Yazzie bag. But before I put it on the bag, I need to do all of my embellishment and beading and embroidery on this piece. So I've done the hair on this lovely lady. And with this, I used a mix of seed beads, French wire, and bugle beads. You can see she's got a lot going on there. With this lady, I'm going to use something different. So I was at Michael's the other day and I found this bead landing chain. It's 6 yards of it and it was on clearance for $3. I've said I will probably use it at some point for something, so I picked it up. And then as I looked at it even more and I was working on this project, I thought, wouldn't it make really cool hair for her? So today I'm going to stitch on some chain hair. So this chain is just something you would use for jewelry making, probably scrapbooking, any sort of mixed media project. But I think it's going to look really cool, kind of all over the place on her hair. And I'm going to be stitching it on with a size 3 Eleganza pearl cotton. These are the Sue Spargo colors, and all the details for the threads and fabrics will be in the description below. So what I would like to do is stitch this on all in one strand. I don't know how that's going to work, but as we work through it, I will let you know. I do have a pair of scissors here just in case I want to, as I'm working on it, decide to like snip off little pieces and do it more in sections. But we're going to see trial and error how this works. So these are just my Fiskars microtip scissors that I use for lots of stuff. I probably wouldn't use my really expensive like embroidery scissors or delicate little scissors with this, because in between the little balls of the chain, it is like, it's still metal, it's not thread. So you do want to use scissors that can handle that, and you're not going to ruin like really nice scissors. Okay, so I've threaded up my needle. I do knot the ends of it so that my thread doesn't pull through. And I'm leaving the chain on the roll right now. Again, trial and error, we're going to see how this works out. I'm not stitching this piece in a hoop. So I do have to kind of finagle the fabric. And I'm using a fairly thick, the size 3 is the thickest pearl cotton that you use, but I'm using the thick thread because I do want it to stand out when I have it with the beads. And I do want to see this color. Her hair is all black and white, but I do want to add some color to her hair. So I'm just going to start with one little stitch over a section of the chain. And then I'm just going to kind of work it around. Again, because what I'm basing the hair off of is the fabric, and you can see the lines that are already in the fabric are kind of all over the place. I do want to keep that effect with my chain. Now I'm noticing as I'm stitching it that it doesn't want to make super tight curves, so I probably am going to have to cut little sections of it. But we're going to try and do a nice long section first and then go back over it after I cut some, because I don't want it to look like it's just a little piece of chain that I've added to this. Okay, so I'm going to take it up some more. And eventually all of the black lines of the hair are going to be covered with all of this. You can see in the beaded version, you can't see any of those lines. So you don't have to worry about that. This is all going to cover that up. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this. I'm really liking how it's looking so far. I'm going to finish one whole piece take it all over one time, and then I'm going to cut it and do like a second layer of it. Okay, so I've stitched on my first layer, and I'm not going to cut the chain yet because it's actually working out really good. The one thing that I am going to do though is change the color of my thread. So I'm at the end of my thread, and what I'm going to do is just tie a knot before I cut it, just so that it doesn't unwind. This is going to be on a travel pouch, so I know the pouch is going to get a lot of use, and I don't want it coming undone when I'm out and about using it. Okay, so I'm just going to cut that off, and leaving my chain attached, I'm just going to thread my needle, and I'm going to use black. And I think the combination of the colors is going to look cool. As I was stitching it, I also noticed that like this stands out a lot because it's like black and white. And this is looking a lot lighter, the piece with the chain. Now, I know it's because I haven't completely stitched it up yet, but I also don't want it to look so different. Like I want there to be a noticeable difference, but I don't want it to be like white hair and black hair, and that's kind of what it's looking like right now. So I'm going to add some black as I'm stitching, and I have just been going back and forth with this thread. Now I'm going through several layers of fabric, and the fabric has been it has heat and bond on the back of it, so that's like kind of like a third layer. So it's been a little bit of a struggle with the thread, but I think it's gonna, you can see it doesn't want to pull through. It's gonna be worth it in the end because I really do want to see the thread. And if I used a thinner thread, I might see some of the color, but not as much. And I just went through my knot. I wouldn't see as much color. And the whole point of stitching it like this is so that I actually see my color. All right. And I normally stitch things in hoops. With this project, I'm not. And so it does take a little bit of an adjustment. There we go. A little bit of an adjustment getting used to not stitching in a hoop. You don't have anything that's holding it tight while you're stitching. So your hand is kind of like, your other hand is doing all of the work while your other hand is stitching. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add this black, and we'll see if I need to cut the chain or if I'm good just keeping it one continuous piece of chain, which I'd kind of like to do. When I came up with this idea, that's kind of what I was thinking, because it'll let me like give it some dimension, and I want the hair to have dimension. So I'm going to keep stitching this, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, so I'm super excited about this. It turned out like exactly how I wanted it to look, and I love when a project goes like that. So I used one continuous strand of this. I didn't have to cut it at all. It did use a lot. I mean, it's a fairly substantially heavy piece, all things considered. I'd say I used, how much is left on there? Maybe there's 2 yards left on there. So I used about 4 yards, and now it's still attached. And so all I'm going to do is just cut it right where the end was. And look at that. Oops, let me see if it can. There we go. And in person, I'm going to try and show you like a side angle. You can see like it really is like a raised effect. But when you look at the beads from the side too, there's like definitely a raised effect there too. So side by side, they definitely look like I have two different hairstyles, which I wanted them to be noticeably different. But I was able to keep the black and the like purple, like fuchsia purple color in there, which I really wanted to incorporate because I have a lot of that in my background too. Also, I just really like the color. So there she is. So I'm going to finish embroidering this piece, and then I'm attaching it to this Yazzie bag, which I will show you when I get to that point. Be sure to check out my other videos. I have lots of stitch tutorials and other videos on adding dimension to your embroidery. And check back soon and see my latest progress on this bag.